Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something wild, microscopic farming, and the tiny bacteria that could quite literally feed the world. So, think about this for a second. What if the biggest revolution in farming wasn't some giant new tractor or revolutionary chemical spray, but was actually microscopic? But to really get why that question is so important, we need to take a step back and talk about a huge problem in modern agriculture, its chemical dilemma. You know the Green Revolution back in the 20th century? It was amazing, right? We figured out how to grow so much more food using high-yield seeds and, of course, tons of synthetic fertilizers and pesticides. It fed billions. But there was a catch, a hidden cost. It turns out that all those chemical inputs have taken a toll. Some studies show that a huge chunk, maybe even 40% of the world's farmland, is now seriously degraded because of it. And this quote from the research, man, it just hits the nail on the head. Basically, by pumping all these chemicals into the ground, we were damaging the soil itself. We solved the short-term problem of hunger, but we were kind of chipping away at the very foundation of our ability to grow food in the long run. Okay, so if the old way, using tons of chemicals, is part of the problem, where do we look for a solution? Well, let's introduce the heroes of our story, nature's tiny allies, the PGPR. All right, first things first, let's get a key term down, biofertilizer. This isn't your typical chemical fertilizer. Nope, it's a substance that's literally alive, packed with living microbes. The idea is you apply it to seeds or soil, and these tiny organisms set up shop around the plant's roots. They act like a support system, helping the plant get the nutrients it needs. Yeah, you can totally think of it as a probiotic, but for plants. And within that big category of biofertilizers, we're zooming in on our main characters, Plant Growth Promoting Rhizobacteria, or PGPR for short. I know it's a mouthful, but all it means is these are special bacteria that already live in the soil. They love to colonize plant roots. That's their spot. And just as the name implies, their whole deal is helping plants grow better. So, how in the world do they do it? How do these tiny little bacteria work their magic? Let's get into the mechanics of it. Seriously, how can something so small have such a huge impact on a plant's life? Well, it all comes down to a really clever two-pronged strategy they use. So they basically have two main ways of helping out. There are the direct effects. Think of this as the nutrition and growth department. And then there are the indirect effects, which is all about being a bodyguard. Let's break down what that actually means. Okay, so the direct effects. The best way to think about this is like the plant has its own personal nutritionist living on its roots. For example, plants need nitrogen, but most of it is just floating in the air, useless to them. These bacteria can literally grab that nitrogen from the air and fix it into a form the plant can eat. It's incredible. They also act like little keymasters, unlocking other minerals like phosphate and potassium that are already in the soil but are chemically stuck. And on top of all that, they even produce hormones that tell the plant, hey, grow faster. Then you've got the indirect effects, which are maybe even cooler. This is where the bacteria become a microscopic bodyguard. They basically form a protective shield around the roots. They take up all the space and eat all the food, so there's nothing left for the bad guys, the harmful microbes. Some PGPR even go on the offensive, producing antibiotic-like substances to fight off pathogens. And, get this, they can even trigger the plant's own immune system, kind of like giving it a vaccine to make it stronger against future diseases. So cool. Now, this isn't just some cool science experiment stuck in a lab. This is real, and it's starting to make waves in the actual farming industry. Let's take a look at the biofertilizer market, because it is absolutely booming. $3.5 billion. That's the projected size of the global biofertilizer market by 2025. I mean, that number alone tells you everything you need to know. There is serious money and momentum behind this, which means there's a huge demand for greener, more sustainable ways to farm. So what kind of biofertilizers are people actually buying? Well, one type completely dominates the market. We're talking about the nitrogen fixers, the ones we just talked about. They made up almost 80% of the market back in 2017. And that totally makes sense, right? Nitrogen is like the #1 most important nutrient for plants, so a natural way to get more of it is a huge deal. And if you're wondering where all this is happening, well, right now, North America and Europe are leading the charge. This is probably because they have stricter rules about using chemical fertilizers and, a growing number of consumers who want sustainably grown food. But don't get me wrong, this isn't just a Western thing. We're seeing this market pop up and grow pretty much everywhere. Okay, so this all sounds amazing. The science is cool, the market is growing, which leads to the big question, right? Why isn't this stuff on every single farm? Yeah, let's just put it out there. If this technology is so great, why isn't every farm on the planet using it? Well, the answer, unfortunately, is complicated. It turns out that taking a fantastic idea from the lab and making it work reliably out in the real world, that's a whole different ballgame. And it is tough. And this really gives you a sense of just how complex the problem is. It's not one single roadblock. You've got biological problems, technical problems, a maze of government regulations, and of course the financial side of things. All of these things are holding back progress. And here's the core of the problem, the big disconnect. In a nice, clean, sterile lab, a new bacterial strain might look like a superstar. It does everything you want it to. But then you take it out into a real field, and it's a war zone out there. It has to compete with all the native microbes that already live there, plus deal with crazy weather, different soil types. And a lot of the time, it just fails. And when you dig into the details, the list of challenges just keeps growing. For starters, a specific bacteria might only work with, say, corn, but not wheat. Then there's the fact that these are living products, so they have a really short shelf life, which is a logistical nightmare. Just figuring out what to mix the bacteria with so a farmer can actually apply it is a huge scientific puzzle. And you always have to worry about contamination or mutations during the manufacturing process. It's tough stuff. So with all these hurdles, you might be thinking, is this even worth it? What does the future of farming really look like with this technology? This roadmap really lays it all out. Getting a new biofertilizer to market is a marathon, not a sprint. You have to start by finding and isolating these bacteria from the soil. Then you screen them in the lab, test them in the greenhouse, then you can finally test them in the field. After all that, you have to test them in combination with other things, make sure they're safe, and then figure out how to actually formulate a product you can sell. It's a long, slow, and very expensive journey. And all of this leaves us with a pretty big question to chew on. As we try to figure out how to feed a growing world without destroying the planet, maybe the biggest change we need to make isn't in our tools, but in our mindset. To build a truly sustainable future, are we going to have to start thinking less about chemistry and a whole lot more about biology? The answer, it seems, might have been right under our feet, in the soil, this whole time.